Okay, the first step in code for the text adventure is to create the model code, copy and paste the model code that is available on the website onto your uh, idle. And after that, it's time to make your first room. So that's where the exciting thing comes, right? So let's take a look at this, which is again some text that's available to you. If you would like to copy and paste it, you could, and then make changes, or you could just um, type in your own ideas once you see how to do it. So either of those ways could work. Once you get it, of course, you're going to be doing enough of your own work in it that it will become yours, even though you maybe start with mine. But that's okay. First of all, I doubt anybody's going to want to start their adventure in a kitchen. I mean, how boring is that? So, this is the room. And here's kind of the process you want to follow. You want to first say where it is that you are. So, like step one, if I was to put this in there, would be room name. Step two would be room description. And that's where you get to start typing what it is they see. Now, just as a note, if you haven't seen this before, if you do 3 quote marks in a row, you can do multiple lines in one print statement. Um, the only weird part about that is it does indent this as well. So really what I should do is like go like this, but that looks so strange since everything in Python has to be indented except for that. Um, but that doesn't really matter. You'll see when I run the example what it looks like with these indented. And then the last output you should do for this part of it is the room exits. So you kind of want to say, make sure you make a point to say all 3 of these things. Even if it's only a locked door, you should still say clearly how you get out. In other words, there's a locked door to your east or something like that. And then they can figure out how to open it some other time. Excuse me. So, um, yeah, those are kind of the parts of it. Now, part of the grade on this is making clear output. So, making sure you kind of do this in a good, clear way is really helpful. You may even want to say, you know what, every time I come to the room, let me give a blank line so that there's, more space. And then thinking about how to make this part readable so it doesn't just, look really hard to read is another thing that you can do. Okay, once you get those parts done, then it's time to do the input. And I've said it, I'll say it many times. The real goal of this program, I mean, not the real goal, but one of the goals of this program is to only have one input, what I call the action step, in every room, and only do one of them. Lots of times, students are tempted to say, oh, but when I go east, then I want to do some other action in here. No, save that for another room. Um, and, and then there's like other things you could do. You're like, oh, but if he picks up the knife in this room, then I want to do another action. There are other ways to solve that problem, and you'll find yourself eventually a lot less confused if you save it for one with one input. So I really encourage that. And to me, it makes sense to call it action, though, of course, it's just a variable. You can call it whatever you want. You also want to think, like, how do you want to do this? Different text adventures will have kind of a different prompt here for what to do next. Some people just like to make a little uh, line like that. But then you get into your actions. And so here's your else statement. And so this is really the meat of it, right? The if statement based on actions. So here's where we try to determine what it is that the user is going to type and then make things react to that. Another thing I like to encourage people to do is think about their exits first, and you could even go around and create every single room you're going to create and just have the doors, and then make it so they can walk from room to room using these actions. Because then you can go back and add objects into the rooms once you can move around. So it's kind of like, maybe you want to create your map first, and then it's a working game, and you can go walk around your map and test it. And then you can put things in that make it a little bit trickier. But some people like to create puzzles right off the bat, and I understand that too. Um, it's just that sometimes you could get so caught up in a really complicated puzzle in like the first two rooms that you never get any further. And if you do this way, at least you'll have 10 rooms that all work, and then you can make a few rooms have puzzles in them. So that's kind of a hint for me. But the way this works, this is like the basic thing that runs this game, is that when you go from room to room, every room has a number. So when I say return 2, what that does is it takes the model stuff down here, and see, we're in room 1 right now because room equaled 1 at the beginning of the code, right? And it says that the room equals whatever comes back from that function. So what comes back from that function is a number. And if I go east, what comes back from that function is a 2, which means it's going to then say down here, it's going to say, oh, well, now the room is a 2, so therefore I'm going to go run the function called room 2. And that's why I call these rooms. I mean, like, you could call these things anything. You could call them areas instead of rooms. That's just, I find it easy to keep track of everything by calling them. Oh boy, I'm yawning, I'm sorry. I call them rooms because I just find that easier to keep track of. I don't know, it looks good to me. And then, just to follow through on that, when they go west, they go into room 3. So I'm taking a look at my map and I'm saying, oh, from here I'm connected to rooms 2 and 3, so I can go back and forth on those. If you're connected to room 5, if you go north, then you would make a north that says, return 5. You don't even have to say anything. You just have to go to the room because the room will say the next thing. So you just have to like send it to them, and then they'll take care of that. Now, if they type in something you're not expecting, that's where you say you can't do that, or please listen. I told you, once the first time. This is how you type things in my game. Whatever sort of information you want to give them when they type the wrong thing goes here. And then it returns to 1, which means it goes back to the code and it says, oh, room is 1. I'm going to go to room 1. And so it goes back and gets stuck here in room 1 and says this part over and over again. So let me just run this so I can show you all that in action. So we bring it over here. You can see that indent that I got because of the way I did my print statement. You don't have to do yours that way. Apparently I'm going to be yawning all through this. I really thought I was more awake than that. So let's just say I type in open refrigerator because of course that's what I want to do, right? Oh, open. Let's try that again. And so I hit enter and it says you cannot do that here, and then it brings me back to the kitchen and I start over again. And I have to think about what I want to do. So then I made it so I could type in east. Now I didn't program room 2 yet, or room 3. So when I go into those, if you do this, if you like, oh, I want to test it out, and then you go into a room that's not created, you'll get an error message, which is fine, because it's not going to fully work until you create all 10 rooms, which is why I suggest maybe you want to create all 10 rooms as early as possible. But if I do this, it's just going to say the study, and then it's going to freeze up, and not, well, I mean, you can see it's like doing stuff, but it's just sitting here. And that's because I just created a funny little loop right here that just makes it sit there and do nothing. You could, if I didn't put this in there, this is actually kind of funny. This is what you might get, which is, okay, I want to go east. Oh, that's weird. The same thing happened. I kind of expected it to say the study, the study, the study, the study, because I thought it was going to happen over and over again. Um, so that's cool that it doesn't, then I didn't need to put this in there at all. But sometimes it can like kind of infinitely loop what's going on here, and that can cause some problems too, because then you just get the same word scrolling down the page, and it's hard to figure out what's going on. But anyway, that's how this works. Now, I want to give one more tip, if you're sticking with me, of something to do with the input here. So once I do my input and they've typed in something, remember, a lot of this program is about predicting what they're going to type and thinking to yourself, what's all the different ways that they might type to go east, that I want to use. So maybe I want to add, just an E, or maybe they might say, I don't even know if you'll be able to see this because it's going off the screen. No, I guess I'm good. Move east, right? So you have to think about all of them. Now you'll notice one thing I did. See, there we go. I knew it was going to mess up. One thing that I did was I assumed they were going to type in lowercase. Maybe I gave an instruction at the beginning of the game that said type in lowercase. And if they don't type in lowercase, they're going to get the "you can't do that here" message. And they'll just have to remember that they have to type in lowercase. But there is a slightly better way to do that. And that is to say action equals action, oops, dot lower. And what this is it takes what action was and it lower cases it and then saves it back into action again. So it's like guaranteed lowercase. So that's kind of nice. And if you've done the string badge, you'll you'll know that already. There's another one that I just learned recently as I'm making this video, which is that there's another one called the strip function. And what that does is it's going to take action and it's going to make sure that there's no spaces at the beginning or end of it, because space east is different than just plain east, and you don't want to have to take worry about if they hit the space bar, because what I've seen happen, I've been seeing this more and more. I never used to notice it, but when people see an indent, an input spot, they often hit a space because they're uncomfortable typing right next to the thing, especially if you had like a question mark or something. They think, oh, there should be a space there, and they don't know that that throws off your entire program. So if I strip it and I put a space there, it's still going to work because I've stripped out the spaces. And if they were not paying attention and they were hitting a bunch of space bars after they typed the word east, like you can see my cursor going across the screen maybe, um, then it would take off any spaces after as well. So just kind of handy to be able to do those two things, because it's going to make you have less errors from your users, which is always a good goal. You also see I was lazy here on the west. There's no way that's the only thing that people are going to type. I should start, creating more and more of these. And that's another thing that you can go in at any time afterwards and kind of think to yourself, what else are they going to type? Um, Again, if you get the whole thing working, then you have other people play it and you watch what they type and you say, oh, of course they would type, some other thing that you hadn't thought of yet. I better put that in there and let everybody type that. It's a pain because you have to go through like every if statement and start adding more ways to do things, but it's going to pay off with a better program that you're more proud of in the end. All right, so that's a basic room, and you can just start going, creating 10 of those and have a lot of fun. There's a few other hints that I can give you further on down the page of code, though, for some more advanced things.